Hey guys, welcome back to Tough Love with Dr. John O'Connor with my co-host Matt Calabria. Today we're going to talk about business growth and what 2024 looks like with letting go to grow. What's up, Matt? What's going on?
Doc, good to be back, man, and good to be lounging back for this one.
Yeah, man. So for you guys that have been loyal followers, thank you so much for that. First off, but today we're lounging and we're just chopping it up in the study in the bar room, and we're changing it up a little bit because we have some upcoming podcasts we're really super excited for. We got multiple guests coming on, so today's the first of many that we're gonna be hosting here in the on the L couch and just fucking chopping it up. Yeeks. So anyway, Matt, let's talk about before we got on the set today. This morning I was up early. I was jamming out to Ed Milet and listening to my podcast. And I always am taken back when, even now, I'm going to be 50 this year. And I think everybody that is an entrepreneur or intrapreneur like yourself, that, you work for our company, but, it's like it's yours, right? And you take the pride in it like you're working for yourself. And,
right.
And I love that about you. But Ed really hit home today because, it was about overspending, trying to hang with the Joneses and, buying stuff on credit and, how many people are not saving it upside down. And I think probably the most profound thing was, and this is something for the young audience to think about or to really resonate. If you have $2 million in the bank when you retire, that's the equivalent to an $80,000 a year salary at, say, the age of 64. So if you're a healthy person, you could legitimately run out of money in the way inflation's going. And it kind of blew me away. It was like, hey, you know what? My team, the crew that's around me, like, I want to create as many opportunities to scale in everything that we're doing, because I never want people to listen to a podcast or sit in on a business meeting or anything like that, because I was terrified. I'm not going to lie. It's like being a math head and an accounting major when I was hooping up at Pace, and I've always kind of liked numbers and being like a budget guy. And I was like, oh my God, like, you really have to be well planned and really be, face forward when you're thinking about how you put money away. And not just about, for me, I think a lot of people with our message, what we bring out there in the podcast is always uplifting, my journey from, being paralyzed as a kid and battling a back and playing college basketball and being a healthcare practitioner and, coaching and all these different things. But, I feel like I've had milestones of success along the way, but I'm going to tell you, like, this last 4 years and why we call this podcast Tough Love was about being in the winter of my life. Right. And the thing about it is, to get to spring and summer, it takes planning. But the crazy thing that I was listening to, I was watching listening to this podcast, and then I started watching some other videos. It really resonated with me, Matt, that most people don't plan.
No.
They think, what's Monday, what's Tuesday, maybe they get to Friday, but they're not thinking about 6 months, 12 months, 5 years, 10 years. And where I'm at in my age, it's funny, I pride myself on how much I take care of myself, and, owning an anti-aging center, which obviously you work with me every step of the way. I feel like I look great, and it's probably the best shape I've been in a really long time. But at the end of the day, I'm going to be 50 years old, and I'm closer to retirement at 50 than I am at starting my career like yourself. And I think today what we're going to focus on is just the same way we take the rituals and routines in feeling good and leveling up in work, activity, interaction, relationships, friendships. But how can we not just be, physically fit, but fiscally fit? So I think that's going to be the spin for today's podcast.
Right.
So let's chop it up, brother.
Right. Love it, Doc. So going off of that, getting ready for the year, short-term, mid-term, long-term goals. I actually just got my new 24 planner over the weekend, so ready to rock on that, filling that in quick. And I feel as if the biggest thing going into a new year, people don't have a hard time when it comes to growing. It's easy to grow, but people find it hard to let go. So whatever it is, goals-wise, that they can't hit, they hold on, or even just owning a business, say, one of our practices, right?
Yeah.
We're talking about letting go of that as we're continuing to grow. So I want you to really dive deep into this about letting go. You have your list of what's to come for 24. you're going to grow, but what is it that you're going to be letting go of and that you can learn from letting go of that?
You know, it's funny. I would have never thought right before COVID hit, we opened something that was a lifetime dream as an adult for me in opening Velocity Freehold. We put our heart and soul in it. The team we put in there, we made a former NBA strength coach, an athletic director at a prestigious high school. The doctors and therapists, the equipment, everything was state of the art. We came out of the gates running. And it's funny when I sit in this room, these are my key people. I'm staring at, a picture of Kobe and Jordan and all people that motivated me as an athlete.
The ghosts themselves.
And one of the things that I always steal from Ed Milet I want to be a business athlete. I train and prepare that way. And obviously you can't plan for a global pandemic. Then the spin was during that 12 or 11 months where our facilities were forced to be shut down, especially fitness space. We were blessed. I mean, the landlord was awesome with us. He knew the capital improvements we made there, but we were sucking wind. And we came back and we've been battling. And with launching the business coaching in 2023, we started staring with what's coming down the pipeline. I have a great opportunity. My boy Brady, we're doing an anti-aging center, down in Florida together in a gym. And, I got something cooking in South Carolina, the podcast, all the brand sponsoring and the coaching. I realized that I'm like, you know what? We're carrying a huge amount of unnecessary debt. And, and again, like the podcast this morning when I was listening to Ed Milet, it's the truth. I mean, we probably pour out $500,000 a year into that facility.
Yeah.
And when we sat at the coaching event this weekend, I only know 3 physical medicine doctors or physical medicine centers that size that aren't attached to a hospital, orthopedic. So kudos to us. But at the same time, it's a huge responsibility. And you could use that word, but it's no longer responsibility for me. It's I'm kind of ready to let it go.
Yeah.
And, I was talking to my business partners and, talking to Jess and, a lot went on in 2023. And I know a lot of people wanted to sprint out of 2023. For me, there was amazing things and a lot of learning things, but, I love that my son has grown up in there. My daughter was there as a young lady playing soccer. My son was just there with, a player in minor leagues with the Cardinals, a couple D1 guys, and he's down at IMG. And I love having that, but we could find that somewhere else.
Right.
But having it at that cost, I think everybody has to be mindful that sometimes you bite off more than you can chew, and ego can destroy us, right?
Can make or break you real quick.
At first, I was like, I need to have this. And don't get me wrong, I love bringing doctors in and coaching in that. But I think Saturday, with the weather and everything, I really hit home with those guys because I definitely went at them and said, this center takes this much to go. And other than Dr. Ferraro, all the other doctors literally look like they were going to throw up on their laps,
right?
Thinking about having to carry that. And we have multiple locations, right? So to have one location that you don't own and you're shelling out $30,000 a month for, you want to 4X that. If you're not making $120, $150 there, it's not worth having.
You're in the negative.
Right? Yeah. And, but again, that's like a look in the mirror and say, hey, what am I doing here? Why am I doing this? Why am I making it so hard? Right. And I think that one of the things that I've always said in coaching and teaching and training and even in healthcare is there's one thing, you sprain your ankle playing in the heat of the battle, you hurt your shoulder, you tweak something. But there's another thing when you repeatedly do something over and over and over again that hurts you and you don't say, like, you don't flag it.
Right.
And say, hey, it's not good for me.
Totally.
And, this year with a big turnover on staff and, look, the one thing in physical medicine or any business, you're going to have turnovers every 3 to 5 years. And of course it had to be perfect timing with everything that was going on in my personal life to have that. But I think one thing you learn is just like they say after a storm, the rainbow, right? there's always that quiet after the storm. And I've never felt more focused in understanding what I want to do on a national scale, on a local scale. And, I was talking to Dakota, I was talking to my daughter earlier, and, I'm blessed to have her as my daughter. I said, probably one of the biggest things that I'm grateful for in 2024, and it just started, is that I'm home and I'm here and I have you.
Yeah.
And, to keep that and keep that mindset, it's time. It's time to pivot and make that move. So I think that's one thing, like to go from 4 locations or go from 3. It's not like retiring, right? You're retired and you got to figure out what to do next, right? Especially if you haven't planned. But when you're pivoting in business, I would have never thought, if you said to me in 2019, I'm going to have a podcast, I'm going to be coaching practices across the country. We're going to be traveling globally for brands and coaching up and do those kind of things. And here we are. And now I'd say, hey, why have that burden? I think if we had one location and that was the one location, it'd be a beast.
Be the mothership.
Right? But not owning it, I would tell, young business entrepreneurs and I think anybody, like, you really got to look at that. You got to put it on the whiteboard and you got to say, hey, listen, you don't want it to stress you. You don't want it to break you. You want it to be something like you get up in the morning and you are just like that, like when spring hits and you've had a long winter and you just run outside, you're like, it's warm, and you just can't wait to smell that warm air and that fresh air. And I think, like anything in life, if something's sitting on you like that and you don't make a decision, at a certain point, the decision is going to be made for you. And I think in my personality, the one thing that I came out of 2023 is thinking is that if it doesn't build you, if it doesn't make you grow, if it doesn't, and for me, I'm always a flow guy. Like, I say in the office for, a quarter century, I'm like, I think my first tattoo is probably gonna have the word flow in it. And, but if you don't have that flow, then you got to let it go.
Yeah.
And, and for me, we're going to ride it. It was laughing now we're renting it out and doing what we got. We're going to ride it till the wheels fall off kind of thing.
Absolutely.
But I have to tell you that now that we're looking at we're finally ready to let it go, it's amazing the weight that's come off my shoulders. So,
and it takes a lot just to let things go, especially, our 15,000 square foot location was your ultimate dream of a sports rehab facility. So, it takes a lot here to let go of that. And just to put it into perspective, the size of location doesn't matter. For future doctors, think of it as this: our smallest location is our most profitable.
100%. And, the one thing we learned about when we built out Red Bank, and over a decade ago now, Dr. Mulholland and I were so, Brendan, is like my older brother, and we were so proud of that renovation. And God knows we got beat up by those contractors, with change orders and everything.
Yeah.
I learned more about construction in a year than I ever would like to learn. And the one thing that I realized, though, is that we looked at that 2 years later and we bought something at $600,000 or $700,000. It turned into a $2.5 or $3 million investment. And so then it was like, hey, that wasn't so bad.
Right.
And I don't care whatever it is, how many athletes that I've consulted with where I'm like, a coach left and it's not the right fit. And so you got to transfer, and that's what I'm looking at it. I'm like, hey, you know what? When we got there, it was a perfect playing situation. And I always bring it back to being on the court and being an athlete. And, when I first got in there, I was like, we're going to crush it. And we were. And like I said, but, the circumstances looking back at it, now it's almost like selling your first house or selling your cars.
Right.
I pride myself on any of the spaces you go into, we keep them meticulous. And whoever gets that space, is going to have an awesome space. And for us, it's going to be like, even we're on stage talking or on the podcast, it's like, hey guys, you know what? Sometimes you're going to take a shot.
Right.
One of my mentors early on in my practice was the guys that own Beer Vino and Undici, and the same thing. They were rapidly expanding. And when I tell you the pride, that I have calling them friends and watching the hustle and the pivot during COVID and selling wine and doing everything they could to turn the outdoor seating and the amount of money they invested to be able to accommodate once they were outdoor seating. I said to myself, I'm like, you know what? They had to do that because I think they lost 2 or 3 of those restaurants. and they were like, hey, we got to cut our losses.
Yeah.
And I think the strength really is in doing that, like knowing when to walk away. And I think that's the power of today's podcast is really knowing when to walk away for growth.
Right.
We're not going backwards. You know, like what's coming at us now, like is unbelievable. You know, I was in the gym yesterday and, you know, you talk about small world, you know, Sean and Clean Media has been amazing. And they're like, hey, go get a workout at Iron Revolution, and met one of our docs down there. Dr. Morris was down there. And, you know, I'm peeling out of clothes and I have Athletic Freak on, and young, good looking athlete kid. All of a sudden I'm looking at him and I thought it was Sean for a second. It was another videographer. And, you know, the kid was shooting for them. And he was like, oh, do you know Mo? And I said, oh man, small world. He just, you know, one of the guys just DM'd me. And so I was like, absolutely going to reach out to him and definitely do something. And then, you know, we're sitting in the clinic today and you just talk about small synergies and saying, hey, let's put our efforts in something that is going to be fruitful and grow.
Right.
And then here we have chief marketing officer, whatever rolls in from Grayson, right?
Right.
And, you know, who do they have on the table? But they're negotiating with Tiger Woods.
Yeah.
And he's like, listen, we'd definitely love to collab with you and whatnot. And, you know, at 50 and being fit, they're like, yeah, let's do it. And to me, the excitement in that, when there's low overhead, it's all grow and no, you know, no going backwards. I'm like, let's do it.
And that's what it is. I feel as if, you know, you let go of one, there's 3, 4, 5, 6 other opportunities waiting to bust through the door. And I feel like from what you just said, Doc, that has a lot to do with, you know, mindset. So if you were to give a message to not only business owners, homeowners, car owners, anybody out there that's wondering if they should let go of something to move on to the next and better opportunity, what would that message be?
Failure is part of the process. It's funny. You know, I was busting my son's chopper before we jumped on the podcast. So I was like, Jay, it's time to beast mode. You know, it's like we were always talking about Beauty and the Beast.
Yeah.
And it was one of our favorite Disney movies when the kids were there. I said, hey, it's time to let go of the beauty. You know, there's no playing around with injuries right now, with aches and pains. It's time to go into beast mode, right? You have to use all the resources and you got to let go of all those fears, because I know when I was going through it and why I've put the core four on the map. And when I get an aches and pains now, I turn into the Israeli defense system, right?
Yeah.
I am attacking it with my modalities and going at it like I am protecting my life, because it's my livelihood. And more importantly, you know, being paralyzed as a kid, I'll never forget laying in that bed when I first got sick. And I was like, wow, I just lost my freedom. And when you are young, I was like thinking to myself as a teenager, I'm like, I'll be better tomorrow.
Yeah.
I'll be better tomorrow. And I remember, you know, staring at my mom and she would cry because I had no fear at all. And I would tell my son that. I'm like, you know, he'd be like, Dad, were you scared? I said, no. You know, Nanny would look at me and, you know, she'd be leaning and give me a kiss. I'm like, Mom, I'll be better tomorrow. I'm good.
Yeah.
Right. And, you know, so I think the reality is with adversity, you got to have that mindset. Fear is part of the process. Fear is a great thing. And, you know, I've been pushing a ton of positive content at both of my kids, you know, these last couple months. And I was listening to Dwayne Johnson. He's got like this 23-minute motivational spot on Spotify. And he always says, you know, put the hard stuff or the tough times in the front and remind yourself what it was.
It's what drives you
to grind.
Yeah.
And, you know, he talks about rounding up and he had $7 in his pocket and, you know, getting hurt and leaving. You know, for him, it was like leaving wrestling to go and be an actor. And there he's failing. And, you know, and then all of a sudden, you know, is he going to scale and grow this business, his acting career, when he was the top and walking away? I think people look at Freehold for us and they're like, hey, you know, they're crushing it. They have these locations. But you know what?
They don't know
if I want to stay on top, you know, I need to say, hey, listen, you know what? It didn't work. We gave it our best. You know, that spot is absolutely amazing, but let it be amazing for someone else.
Yeah,
let's
exactly.
pivot and let's do stuff. Let's repurpose what we have. Let's grow into other things and go into other states and just go in different directions.
Right. And it's always, you know, as you know, I have the mentality of bigger and better. And that's how it always should be. And I feel as if a lot of people now don't realize what's to come. They're just stuck in the present thinking, if I lose this, what I have here, I'm done and I've lost. I feel people find it very hard to find that motive in their head to keep moving forward and find the next best thing.
1,000%. But the bottom line is, those are people, like, listen, if I sat there and shared with people my last 90 days, most people wouldn't get out of bed, right? And I've had to get up and take that movie character mindset, get dressed, shave, stay in your routine, stay disciplined. And, you know, and I've gained things and I've lost things.
Yeah.
And there's more in the wake of everything that happened to come. And I'm like, you know what? You could sit there and say, hey, man, why me? You know, and, you know, I look at it like my whole life. You know, I was talking to a coach the other day, and it's funny, they're coaching me, right? And so she's like, it doesn't sound like you've had any adversity. Yeah. And I didn't really share my personal life. And I chuckled at her. I was like, you know, I don't know what your expertise is. Yeah. I was like, all right, well, I was like, let me just rattle it off.
Yeah.
You know, paralyzed as a teenager, right? Got injured my knee, had my knee rebuilt, fractured my skull, had a flare up with the paralysis in my late 30s, broke my back, fractured my skull again. And got hit with COVID after, you know, shelling out and saying, hey, we're going to launch right now.
Yeah.
I was looking at my competitors and I knew as a provider that was still working, where a lot of them were starting to sit back and enjoy their wealth. It was almost like,
it was go time.
It was almost like looking at you on next to me on the court and saying, hey, you're sleeping. Let's go on a run. And, you know, sneaking a chip. Right.
Yeah.
And, you know, so I've been through it. And then when she came back, it was like, oh my God, I had no idea. And she was like, I can't believe how tough you are. And she changed her tone. And I said, when you have no other choice than to be tough, then you understand that's the only way there is to be.
Right.
And, but I will say the one thing is, I think with age comes wisdom, or at least should, is that, but you have to find peace.
Yeah.
Right. And I think, you know, for 2024, you know, we're to pivot, we're making some big moves. Everything's happening right now. I'm so grateful and blessed to have the team I have around me. And, you know, and I wish well for everybody that's kind of moved on. But, you know, having to say this, I think that where we're at right now is probably one of the most pivotal move. You know, like right now, it's like we're playing chess.
Yeah.
And if we strategically do what we're supposed to do, I'm confident that it's going to be like, you know, listening to like the Alex Ramosi saying, you know, if you worked hard for 6 months, you'll do more financially in the next year than you did in your last 10 years.
Yeah. And it's really, we're getting out of our comfort zone here. We were just talking before.
Yeah.
We're all learning. I'm learning things I've never learned before. Mm-hmm. And that's part of growth when it comes to career, life in general.
What I found, and it's so true, and like I said, I mean, these business coaches, mentors, podcasters, whatever you want to call it, the bottom line is they're broadcasting their story. Why they're good at it is because they understand how to deliver and make you feel their pain points. When we were talking to the practices, we were talking to guys that got stuck. We had another coaching event this weekend, and guys that got stuck because of the storm that was supposed to come in or hit around us.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't hit us in our county, but it hit hard. And, you know, hearing their volume and then what they were bringing into their business and genuinely seeing the disappointment in their face, I was like, hey, you know what? We could help fix this.
We're here.
Right?
We got you.
And, you know, yeah, is there a risk? Sure. Is it going to take an effort? Sure. But, you know, this is where, you know, me, I go right to a Kobe, you know, analogy. I'm like, you know, practice was at 7 a.m. He was up at 2 a.m. on the court at 3 a.m. He was practicing until 5, you know, then he'd eat and then he'd get to practice an hour before those guys practice. And then he, you know, even if there was a game or something, he was showing up and he was like, in my head, if I can add these times and these hours per day, I'll be years ahead of them.
Yeah.
In 2 years, I'll be 10 years ahead. And I think right now, I think what we have to do is take that mindset.
Right.
And I really believe that this is the year of transformation. I love that I'm staring at Kobe, and obviously he had multiple numbers, but I'm loving that this is 24 as I'm looking at him, because I think this is going to be a year where I realized it on Saturday when a couple of the vendors were like, "You're going to be on a stage, and you're going to be coaching and delivering a message to people that's going to resonate." And it made me happy because, like I said, how hard it was for me to give up the training and what was going on. And I was like, you know what? I said it before COVID, and people would ask, saying, Doc, you're not going to be this, youthful forever. And I said, yeah, man, I've always felt like Peter Pan until I got punched in the mouth. And, it wasn't the first time. So I was like, yeah, if I get back, but then I knew it was time to let go. But now when I'm coaching with Velocity HP Coaching, I feel like, hey, man, Doc's back.
Yeah.
And it's not the same court, but much like, again, listen to Dwayne Johnson, I love what DJ was saying when he was like, hey, listen, I'm up at 3:45 on the bike by 4, blah, 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 and I'm not in the ring anymore. When I get to the set, that's my playing stage. That's my field. That's my ring. That's my, that's my diamond. That's my, that's my turf. That's my hardwoods. And when I get in front of people to coach, we just got invited to come down with Dr. John to with that international shockwave event. And I was like, yeah, I'm coming.
Yeah.
Because to me, I want to be, I want to be special forces in that when I show up, I want them to know that I bring it on a whole nother level.
Right.
That there's a value that they're like, wow, he moves a room.
And you got your mojo back with it.
Yeah,
that's so important.
So
you need that niche, and you found
well, that's it. You can't. What we realized in healthcare, and this was probably 5 years ago, 6 years ago, when we'll close on this, was what got you here won't keep you here.
Right.
And as everything's changing, like I was telling my guys when we were chopping up before we got the new set up today, I was like, man, it's crazy looking at AI intelligence, what they're doing with social media, and how soon it's going to be like you could put your phone on, talk to your phone, and your phone's going to film what you want.
Yeah.
I was even noticing on the edits on the stories changed.
Yeah.
So now all of a sudden they have different filters. Like it just updated in a second. It's like, and you want to pivot ahead of that. You got to have an answer.
Yep.
Why is your healthcare better? Why is your business system better? Why is your logistics business better? Why is your consulting business better?
What separates you?
What separates you? And if you're thinking you got there, you to stay there, you won't be in the one spot for long. So today's mission, like I said, is like this is a year of transformation. 24 is going to be a year of letting go to grow. I think, I know you say the best, so many people always say, hey, best year ahead, but I really believe it. And, I'm 50 in May, and I'll tell you, it's the best I felt in a long time. And the best perspective I have is like, even when I don't feel great now, I'm like, hey, you know what? I'm thankful for everything I have around me and grateful. And the minute I take my head off of saying, oh, I don't feel great, I'm thinking about what else I can do to be better or feel better or help somebody else. It's amazing how any ache or pain I have is gone.
Right.
And I think that that's probably the biggest message I could give our audience today is like, hey, listen, if you're going through it and you got to make changes, you got to start getting on a whiteboard and look at it and say, hey, listen, I got to tighten up these 3 things. I'm not going to go out to dinner unless I can buy it for cash. I'm not going to go clothing shopping unless I can pay for it cash. If I'm going on a vacation, I want to sock all that money away. And when you start doing that and you start putting that plan, it's no different than saying, I'm drinking a gallon of water a day. I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And you're crushing it. And it's like, hey, wait a minute. I'm taking that same responsibility with my physical fitness as I am with my physical fitness. Right. And now you're tight on all fronts. Mm-hmm. So I love today's topics. I thought it was fantastic. Matt, thanks for chiming in.
Yes, sir.
Today's podcast was sponsored by MedRay Laser. Absolutely a game changer in our Core 4 system. If you're a physical medicine provider looking to up your game, go MedRay. And for all you viewers, thank you so much for joining us as always. You can follow us on our Instagram. So awesome. We just hit 1,000 viewers. Thank you so much. We couldn't do it without you guys. Follow us on our platforms. Please share our story. And if you think our message has value, share it to your friends and family. We'll see you again soon.